Welcome to the International Schools Podcast. I'm your co-host, John Mickton. Dan is away. One of the things that all students, adults, usually in their arc of schooling, there is a final exam. You to get out or to move on, to transition from one section to another, from say middle school to high school, or from high school to a university, from a bachelor's to a master's. There always is an exam, and these exams have been going on for centuries, and they would come in different flavors and different colors. And these exams often are based on your knowledge. So they're testing your knowledge. Some of it is just the memorization of all the knowledge, and you spill it out on the piece of paper or the interface that you're working with. And basically you're assessed on that. And with that number, usually a number or percentage, that gives you a ticket to new opportunities, or it doesn't. And universities very much, however we like to think they don't find these things important, they are. And in international schools, it's really interesting because we talk a lot about non-grading, but if you look at websites, and I always do that in the summers, check international school websites, and what you generally see is IB scores, AP scores posted, and percentages and comparisons and congratulations, and that measure keeps being a point of reference. Is it the main focus or not? That depends on the context in the school. But these exams are really important. What we know, and through research and through many other forms of pedagogic learning, like the apprenticeship, the mentoring, more hands-on type of experiences, sandwich courses where kids learn and then work in the industry and flip-flop between. There are many other avenues to measure the talent and the potential and the capacities of learners than these exams. But we kind of stuck to the exams, one for efficiency. One is that parents always compare their schooling experience to what they see in their children. So if there's not an exam, they're thinking, well, how are they going to be successful? I was successful because I passed an exam, went to university and passed a bunch of exams. And actually at my work, I had to pass an exam. So all these things come together. And I'm really excited because, believe it or not, there are people out there in the international school world that are doing a lot of incredible work and really thinking about this deeply and reflecting on, does this have to be like this? And are there not other pathways? And the Collaborative Pathways is an organization of volunteers, international school leaders and educators that have come together across the globe, and that's so fascinating. And they've come together and are starting to develop some thinking and even some formats, and really challenging schools to start rethinking what is a measure to work with to really highlight the potential and the richness of each individual learner, because everybody comes with something amazing. Sometimes it's not obvious, sometimes it is, but that idea of really being differentiated and giving everybody an opportunity to highlight their talent and their skills is so important. So today I have Tami Canale, who's the director of the teaching and learning for the upper school at the American International School of Budapest. I have Patricia, who's the deputy head for teaching and learning at the International School, the Aguilas, and Melanie, who is the secondary principal at the American International School of Bucharest in Romania. And Melanie, Patricia, and Tami have been working together, and they were super kind to say, hey, we're happy to come and have a conversation. So to you, thank you so much for taking the time and being here today.
Thanks. It's great to be here, John.
So the first question I think is what everybody's wondering is, here you are all three in schools where I imagine there is the IB, the AP, or IGCSE. There are some exams floating around, and there is definitely a lot of work being set up and a lot of learning focused on how do we make kids successful in this knowledge measurement. And it's part of the cycle of school. Might be at different levels, middle school, upper school, secondary school, however it is. But my question to you is, what kind of drove you? What was the impetus and motivation for this project? Well, how did you come together? And given the ways things are changing so rapidly around us, this really makes sense, because I think schools do need to rethink the exams and assessment, especially when we know with internal assessments in ChatGPT. Basically, that really is a dead thing now because kids are able to be very sophisticated using large language models to support them and answering such places. So I'll leave it to whoever wants to start and kind of give us your motivation and how does this fall in this changing world?
Hi, John. Thanks for having us here with you today. I'll maybe jump in and start off with a response to that question. When we're thinking about having a driving impetus or motivation for this project, it really was centered around creating more personalized experiences for the students in our schools. So as you described, we all work in schools where exams are a very real thing, and we're really proud of the programs that we have in place. And we recognize, based on research and reports, that there are many changes needed for students to be ready for their future. So when we look at the World Economic Forum and what they talk about as core skills in 2025 and what the top 10 fastest growing skills for 2030 are, none of them are about having knowledge and passing exams and standardized testing processes. They're much more around students having motivation, empathy, and active listening skills, being able to use AI and big data, and how to really critically analyze what is there. So when we think about the students in our schools and we want to prepare them for the future that's coming, we know it's really important that they have personalized pathways that for them give them the agency to take control over having meaning and taking care of themselves in their lives. So I think that's the driving impetus that brought all of us together to want to create a new opportunity for students as we look at their futures and preparing them for the world out there today.
So one thing that you said, Melanie, was that, yes, we're very proud of the current programs, which are more assessment exam driven, but we're trying to bring an alternative. So it's like there's a plan A and there's a plan B. As I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, you're not trying to blow out the exams out of the water and then say, now this is the new, so it's really a complement.
Yeah, absolutely. When we talk about the Global Impact Diploma, it sits alongside the high school diplomas that we currently offer in our schools. So all of the students in our schools would still graduate with the standard high school diploma that we offer. And this is essentially an additional diploma that gives them an opportunity to really specialize in an area that leads to impact. One of the things that we've talked a lot about as this Pathways Collaborative is how impact, or students being able to transform themselves, inspire each other, and make meaningful contributions to our local and global communities is really what we're striving to have students do. We recognize that impact, or the connection that our students have in our communities, could be much stronger than it is, and giving them those opportunities allows them to develop the very skills that they need for the future. So we still know students have to take classes. We still need breadth of knowledge and experience in different disciplines to be well-rounded. And we feel like there's a real opportunity here to narrow that focus to things that students care about and bring them joy and passion in their own learning.
Yeah, and I think it's so important the way you describe that, because I think of my own two young adult children that are in, in industries that didn't exist 5 years ago. And one of the things that they always refer to being products of international schools is this idea of the rigor. And how important the rigor was. Maybe they don't remember everything, but there was something about the rigor and the critical thinking and the problem solving and the deep thinking that I think they feel now is an important part of their toolkit as they navigate these new type of environments. And I just really like the way you framed that. We know that many schools are already trying to make changes, and we have some schools that go with the high school diploma, where, in other words, there's a credit system. So some students might not be able to do the full IB. They do the high school diploma. Some might even do the career path IB, which is a more a less focus on as many exams. There are some schools that even create their own indigenous programs. I'm not as familiar with them. They tend to be more common in public school systems, like here in Switzerland, and I have a reference point of the United States. But I'm wondering, what made you decide to work collaboratively across these different parts of the world, and what does it look like now that you are together and working on this? Describe kind of the dynamics, because it's so interesting coming from very different parts of the world.
So I'll jump in on this one. This is Patricia. John, something that you said a few minutes ago about how, there's a lot of bespoke programs. Schools across the globe have been trying to think about how to change some of the more traditional systems in our schools. So, you spoke of Carnegie credits and the idea of, shopping for credits over the course of a 4-year student career. And that's a system that was developed over 100 years ago. And the world has really changed since then. And that standardized model of having students, everybody gets, 4 credits of English and everybody gets 3 credits of math and everybody gets 3 credits of science. That standardized approach to education, we're living in a different world now, and we have the opportunity and the tools to really be able to personalize education in ways that we never did before. So I've worked at a number of different international schools, and everyone I've worked in, it seems like, has been trying to solve this by themselves. So, I worked at ISKL for quite a few years, and we developed something called the Pursuits program. I know many members of our team. I think it's important to recognize that it's not just the 3 of us working on this. The design team encompasses about 20 or 30 of us from all schools all over the world. And, each one of our schools has been trying to figure this out. And so, but it's really hard to get traction in a single school. The stakes are very high. You're talking about students' futures. They're very nervous. The parents are very nervous. Nobody wants to take a risk on a new program when it's their college admissions at stake and their future career pathways. So it was hard. Each of us working individually was not getting the traction that we felt it deserved. So what's really the most powerful and personally the most exciting thing about this entire project is the way that schools have come on board with this and the way that we're working together in ways that I've never seen in my career as an international educator.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
it really began in December last year when a small group got together and said, well, what if we coordinate our efforts and try and build something together? And those 12 turned into 35, and they started having Sunday meetings online in January, February, March of 2024. And then the word spread like wildfire across our schools. And by the time they were hosting, the American International School of Budapest was kind enough to host a gathering in early May of 2024. Over 90 schools were interested in participating. I mean, the way that it caught fire, I think, really speaks to the interest that people have of making changes in schools, but how troubling it's been to try and do it in isolation.
I think your point's a very important one because when you do it as a school, and having been in a school where we looked at alternative pathways, it's kind of lonely, and parents are like, so who else is doing this? And they're like, well, actually nobody, but we're going to do it. And they're like, yeah, time out. This is not going to work for us. But I think there is something beautiful about reaching out, and just the story that you tell us, how you started on a Sunday, little online meetings, and then you do a physical in-face meeting, and there are 90 people. That's a lot of people. And I imagine from very different schools, different cultures, different cultural contexts, and different parts of the globe. And there is something so powerful about this collaborative piece and gaining traction. And I think for parents too, that travel around different schools, if they start hearing this narrative more and more, they're going to be like, oh, this is just not an isolated event. This is really something that's well thought out. Many schools are adopting it because there's worth, and it's something that's significantly to be considered. I'm wondering, because each one of you are in different cultural and geographic contexts, and international schools, we have parents from all different backgrounds, different cultures. Some cultures are very exam driven. It's a lot about grades. Others are more open-ended and loose, but they all kind of come together, and you kind of have to find that middle ground where everybody can kind of say, yeah, we're okay. We can live with this. But I'm wondering, what are you doing to have those conversations with the parent community to say, hold on, this is an alternative pathway, but to kind of maybe minimize their anxiety, if that's the word? Or, how do you also, at the same time as you're talking to the parents, talk to kids, because maybe their point of reference is, well, my bigger brother or my bigger sister got exams and they were very successful. So Tami, maybe you can dig into this question for us.
Sure. One of the things that we're doing is making sure that, when we're navigating those cultural differences, we're really focusing on core competencies that span across geography, across cultures. So referring back to what Mel was talking about, the skills that all of our kids around the world are going to need in the future, foundational things like communication, problem solving, those kinds of things. And then when we're focusing on those competencies, we help our parents understand that we are a strong group. We're more than 25 schools now who are collaborating on this together. We're helping each other out. We're still designing together. We still meet on Sundays to help each other design courses. Out of the Pathways Summit in May, we had a very fast pilot of a leadership course that was developed very quickly and hit the ground running in September. We've gotten a lot of feedback from the schools and that have implemented that program. We've asked the students to give us feedback and help us iterate on that. And so we're trying to focus on those sort of transdisciplinary skills that are important for the future and span across the world.
So when you talk about this leadership course, I assume that when you're talking about within, so for example, Patricia, Melanie with their leadership teams in their respective schools, you're creating a course to get people to understand kind of the structure, the format, some of the language that you might be working with?
It's actually a student leadership course. So it's helping students lead themselves and lead others and understand effective strategies, communication skills, the design cycle, those kinds of things.
Oh, excellent. And why did you decide to focus on the kids first and not maybe the teachers in schools?
That's a great question. I think because the kids are what it's all about. It was a way for us to go in with something that we knew was foundational. And during the sort of 42-hour design relay in the Pathways Summit, leadership and student voice was something that came out strongly. And so we had some volunteers saying, we want to try something out. And we were using the design cycle to do everything that we did. So we thought, well, let's try a pilot. And it's been very successful. Yeah. There's another iteration that'll go into place next fall.
And I just think always focusing on the students first. We sometimes are apprehensive to do that and to give them voice, even though we have it all over our missions. We sometimes are a little more cautious. Melanie, you also maybe can talk a bit about the parent, kind of the parent effect. You've had meetings, you've kind of maybe even had little workshops. How was that received and what was your approach? Because I'm sure people come with a million questions.
Yeah, thanks, John. It has been a really exciting venture here at AISB in Bucharest. And I would say I didn't design and put this together with how we would roll it out with our parents. That has also been collaborative amongst the schools that are doing this. Our connection and our sharing of ideas and resources and presentations to be able to talk about pathways in our schools and be able to show that there's equal value in all of the different pathways that students can take has been kind of central to what we've done. In my specific context, we decided to start first with a whole community presentation. So we do monthly secondary parent coffees, and we created one that was open to the whole across the school, where I worked with some of my colleagues to do a presentation on our high school pathways. And actually the largest number of participants at that particular session were middle school parents, which I thought was really interesting because they're thinking about their children's future and what the options are going to be as their kids come up into our high school. So we started trying to generate some interest within the community with the parents, and then narrowed that more specifically to the group of students that will be eligible to begin with the Global Impact Diploma. So talk to our current 10th graders about an exciting opportunity coming up for them, which led into a session specifically with their parents. And the questions the parents were asking were fabulous. They were really energized by this idea that their students could have more agency in looking at what they were doing going forward. That, of course, was tempered with all of the questions around university acceptance and what that means for their kids. Yeah. And I think one of the things right from when we kickstarted work with the Global Impact Diploma was that there was a university recognition team that was put together. And the individuals on that team started looking at data from all of the schools that are part of the Global Impact Diploma and where do our students matriculate to? What do we need to know about those schools and what admissions requirements are in order to get accepted into the programs that students students want to leave our international schools and head towards. So by starting to look at some of the data that's there and know what those requirements are, it becomes really clear that our college counselors will be able to work with and coach individual students to take a pathway that makes sense for their future ambitions. And so working in collaboration with both other international schools, but also our college counselors, who are really the experts in what this looks like, has been an important part of addressing the question around successful pathways that allow students to go where they want to.
I love it that there was this kind of subgroup doing university admissions and looking at the pathways. What were the most common universities? Because there are certain universities that I know from my personal experience with my two children that were a little more receptive to that kind of thinking. And there were opportunities maybe to do that in a watered down version, nothing like your global impact diploma. Maybe talk to us a bit about this global impact diploma. So I'm a kid, I'm in 10th grade, I'm ready to start. What are some of the things I have to think about, and where would I have to kind of get some coaching? Am I tied to a mentor or something like that?
Yeah. So the diploma is an impact-driven diploma. So we'll ask you to think about what impact you'd like to make. What pathway, what sort of area would you like to focus on? Maybe you'd like to focus, John, I know you, so maybe you'd like to focus in STEM or STEAM. Maybe, someone else would like to focus in health and medicine. So what is the area where you'd like to make an impact? So that's kind of first and foremost, where do you want to make a difference? We recognize this diploma as a complement to all of our high school diplomas. So you would still be achieving your own school's high school diploma, whatever the requirements are. Most of us have 4 English, 3 math, 3 social studies, those kinds of requirements for service, those kinds of things. And in order to sort of specialize in the area that you want to make a difference in, whether it be health and medicine or STEM and STEAM, you will look at what kind of specialized classes you'd like to take. Now, those classes could be classes that your school offers. It could be IB classes. Maybe if you're going into business, you want to take IB business management, IB economics, at the HL level. So it could be IB courses, could be AP courses if your school offers those. Some of our schools work with the Global Online Academy, so they're very specialized sort of niche courses with GOA that you could take. So you'll identify your area and what kind of specialized classes you'd like to take. You'll take some classes around collaboration for impact and agency for impact, which means that you'll also have an internship or a work experience as part of your overall experience for the diploma. In the end, you're going to produce a process portfolio and exhibition in the end that we will moderate among our 25 schools. We'll each take examples of portfolios, look at them so that there's a sort of standardization process, to ensure that rigor and that high quality. And that's what gives us the power of collaboration.
You said that you could take the example was the business, and this student decides to take some IB classes. I assume when you're doing the Global Impact Diploma, you are not doing the full IB, but you can pick and choose. It's a bit like a buffet where you can pick and choose certain things that your school offers, or even online, like GOA was an example. Am I correct in the understanding?
For most people, it will be that way, but the IBO has also reached out to us. We've been speaking with the IB, we've been speaking with the Advanced Placement College Board Organization. Lots of big organizations, NEASC, CIS, are taking notice of this collaborative effort. And we've been talking to the IB about how a student might possibly have a dual diploma, both the Global Impact Diploma and the IB Diploma, what that might look like, what kind of structures might need to be in place. And it's very exciting. Lots of possibilities for our kids.
One thing that you said that I think is really important, this culminating event and artifact, you talked about a process journal, which is really interesting, because often if you do the IB, I just think of my kids, they did the exam and they're never again going to have to learn the dates of the Russian Revolution. They would just ask ChatGPT anyway. So, but I'm just So this is, to me, really interesting. So it's kind of the design thinking model. It's the process and your thinking and your problem solving and your critical thinking, your reflections, maybe your tweaking and redesign and
Absolutely.
reformatting. So that I think is just wonderful. Patricia, talk a bit about some of the alternative schools, because you mentioned here the kind of like the Learn Life, some of these other things, because you obviously have been inspired. I'm not saying that you didn't come up with this as amazing ideas one morning at breakfast or during a wonderful walk, but often we have, things that inspire us, or we hear or feel or see something. Maybe talk to us a bit about that, Patricia.
Yeah, I think it's really what's really been inspiring about this whole journey with all of these different schools is that we all represent such different learning models at our schools. I mean, there are some schools that are full IB and some schools that only have the DP. And there are some schools that are AP. And then there are some schools, there's one in particular that I was really inspired by at the Pathways Collaborative Summit, a school in Spain called Learn Life, and they're working on doing nothing but personalized pathways for their students. And so what the power of the model and the collaboration and the work that we've done is that it can be adjusted and adapted to different school settings. And I think that's one of the real powers in this project. We're not just trying to do something like create an alternative to the IB. It's not really about that. It's about helping kids have more personalized learning experiences in a way that's rigorous and validated, and that it can be adapted to any of our school settings. It's a really powerful, John.
I think what you're saying is so important is this idea of a certain fluidity and agility, in the sense that if I'm in a school, say in Estonia, or I'm in a school, say in Eswatini, the overarching idea is there, but there is a capacity to kind of mold and work within the context or the construct of your local school. I'm wondering, so as you're doing this, you obviously have heads of schools that are very excited. You now have some parents in middle school that are very excited. How about teachers? Because I know for a lot of IB teachers, and I'm very going to be criticized for what I'm about to say, but often, schools, teachers feel measured by their IB results. If a teacher has a lot of sevens, that obviously is seen positively. And maybe if they don't do as well, that might not be seen as well. How are you working with teachers who are maybe also looking for the validation and also the engagement, and knowing that, well, if I go down this pathway, I'm not going to be judged differently if I'm not doing IB exams and I don't get the results? Melanie, you seem keen to answer that.
Yeah, I am keen to answer it. Maybe in part because I am super excited that the IB diploma coordinator that I work with here at AISB is completely on board. He
Fantastic.
very much sees that we can offer the full diploma program to the students that's the best option for, and we can offer other students an alternative pathway that is equally as valuable. So for us, the individuals who are going to coordinate the Global Impact Diploma program at our school both happen to be DP teachers. We have our TOK coordinator, who is an IB DP history teacher, and our IB business teacher, who are the ones that are going to co-coordinate the development of this program, because they really see the overlap and the power and potential for students to be able to specialize in those classes and have the real world application pieces that come with an internship and an exhibition project, and a way of looking at their thinking and learning that takes the knowledge that comes out of those classes and applies it to real world applications. So I think for us, teachers are really excited about this. They really see the potential to take what they already do and make it even better and more applicable in preparing students for the future. So I don't see it as a challenge for us. I see the excitement with faculty members to double up on what they're doing and help students become even more successful.
And I think it's really interesting the way you describe that, is that, if you're an IB teacher, very likely there are a lot of real life issues or problems that you'd like to focus and highlight, but the way the content and the timing often, and now it seems like there is this alternative pathway that you can have both, the way you describe both of your colleagues that are really excited about this. If you think of one of the common pushbacks all three of you have had that transcends culture and your geographic location. Is there something? Patricia, you're shaking your head, so I might lean in on you to answer that if that's okay.
So it's such a great question and an important one. So, in trying to create a model that's flexible enough to move into different schools, it means that we also in each individual school has to adapt to what the requirements or what the diploma is requiring. So I can speak to Nido, and I'll say that we're a founding member of the Global Impact Diploma, but for the school year 25-26, we'll only be offering one course. We're not offering the full diploma. We're looking to adopt that in July of 26. And that's partly because we already had started different efforts at our school around innovation and change. We had just started a 10th grade change makers course. All 10th graders at our school are required to take change makers. In 9th grade, they take something called first year seminar. And in 10th grade, they take change makers. And it aligns a lot with some of the same goals as what the Global Impact Diploma is. I mean, helping students understand what it is to make a difference in the world and to hone certain skills like design thinking and critical thinking, problem solving, and leadership. So if we want to adopt the full diploma, we're already in process. We're in year 2, and to pull the plug on that and shift gears completely is not the best change process. We also have just this year adopted, we brought in a teacher to help us create a partnership with Syracuse University on an entrepreneurship class, which also aligns really nicely with the goals of the Global Impact Diploma, but it's going to take us a year or 2 to figure out how do we make it all, to make it all fit and to have a more seamless transition into the Global Impact Diploma for our students. So that's one of the challenges that we're facing at our school.
But what I'm hearing, which I think is really exciting, you mentioned Syracuse University. And so there are opportunities with higher education institutions. Are you also talking to corporations? I'm just thinking like Amazon or some of these tech companies that really work in that kind of startup mentality, problem solving, redesign, every day is a new day, kind of the startup mentality. Are you exploring that too, getting support from industry, or is that something still on the wish list?
No, I think that's something that's a critical part of the diploma, but I think each school has to figure that out for themselves, because you really want to have a localized context and localized partnerships. So trying to connect with big organizations like Amazon are much challenging across the globe. And it's much more powerful, I think, for students to understand where and how they can have an impact in their local communities, right? Think globally, but act locally. That's the classic phrase, right? So those kind of partnerships that you're describing are a critical part of the diploma program, but each school has to build those partnerships for themselves
at the local level. And Tami, what you talked about, that you have these 25 schools, the student comes with their artifact at the end, the process journal, and what are you basically going to create a standard where if I'm in Bucharest, or if I'm in Chile, or if I'm in Budapest, wherever I might be, all of them will be measured the same way? A bit like I'm sure you're familiar with the Mastery Transcript Consortium, kind of this idea that there's a standard baseline that measures, and that gives maybe the power for parents to engage with it.
Absolutely. And that's kind of where I was going to go next with that, is that we're building on work like the Mastery Transcript, like the Learner Passport in Geneva at ELMLE.
My school,
schools that are well done.
We're building. I take no credit for that.
We're building on all your great ideas, John. All of your original ideas, Melbourne metrics, those kinds of things. So the idea is that kids will be able to articulate how, provide evidence of how they're achieving the competencies that we've outlined. And then we as a group of schools will have a common understanding of what is acceptable evidence and what does that look like. That's another one of our sort of subgroups that's working on that. What does that look like? What are the requirements? What are the logistics of sharing portfolios with each other? And that's still in process, and very much a grassroots effort from the schools themselves.
This is all just so exciting. I love it. It's just great to hear. And just, all three of you are giving so much energy and passion. So tell me, did you each have an experience in school with exams that was not positive, that kind of motivated you to go into this? Or I'm just curious of your own personal journeys with exams and alternative pathways. Well, I'm going to, you don't know that you're in this clockwise, but I'm going to start with Patricia, then Melanie, and then over to Tami. So I just love to hear kind of your own personal journey of learning and what resonates for you that maybe was not available.
I'll speak not so much. I was in high school a very long time ago, John, so I'm not going to speak to my own. I'm not going to speak to my own experience, but I will talk about the experience about the high school that I was at, where the IB program had gotten so powerful or so dominant in the school culture among the students that there was a real pressure for students to do the full diploma, even when it wasn't the right fit for them. And what ended up happening was, over a period of time, something like 70 or 75% of students were opting into the full DP program. And it wasn't really the right program for all of them. And then what happened sort of concurrently to that is that set up a dynamic among the students where you're either IB or you're not. And then there was a whole group of students who didn't have that camaraderie that the other students did, who were staying up all night studying, who had, oh my gosh, my extended essay is due, or, oh, I can't do this. They created a whole community for themselves, the DP group. But then you had this other group of students who were just kind of left on their own. And I just didn't feel like that was these are not the kinds of high school programs and experiences that we want to be creating for our kids. And it happened that my own children were students at that same high school. And so I really got to watch it among their friend groups and how that dynamic played out among them and their friends.
I think that pecking order and kind of that, I'm full IB, you're not full, that the badge, and it becomes a hierarchy. And for some kids, it can be really challenging. They might have some neurodiversity that they need to manage, and it might be a context of their family or whatever. So I love that. Yeah, I think what you describe is unfortunately more common than uncommon. So I think that's a wonderful way to kind of consider addressing that cohort. Melanie.
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about my own experience. When I was a high school student, I graduated from high school in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and we had flexible Wednesdays in our timetable. And so what that meant is it was a shortened day. We came into school late and left a little bit early, and there were 4 blocks throughout the day, and you got to map out what you decided to do in each of those 4 blocks. So sometimes it was get together with a study group to focus on something. Perhaps there's a teacher that you wanted to see for support in a particular class, or you could design your own program for something you wanted to do. As an avid basketball player at the time, one of the things I was really thinking a lot about was fitness that went alongside with playing basketball. So I had the opportunity to develop a fitness program with my basketball coach to really look at developing my own particular strengths, physical strengths, in order to aid the game of basketball. And I think back about that and how powerful it was in terms of not only getting to know more about myself and how to contribute to a team and to grow and develop my skills, but the learning that I can reflect on, what I learned about the transfer of knowledge to real world applications, is something that has always stuck with me. And until you ask that question, I don't think I would have connected that experience with the work that I'm doing now, but it resonates so clearly, having thought about how powerful that high school experience was for me and what I hope we can continue to do more of for students going forward.
Excellent. Tami.
So I did really well on tests. I was a great student. But I think what I was lacking, like I could memorize all the dates, I could, feed back all the information. But I think what I was lacking is the actual application. And so I think that although I did well in the system, it took me a little bit longer to be able to apply that learning and understand how and why that was important, and build, important skills like, being able to design something as opposed to just jumping into a project. So yeah, I gamed the system. I was able to do what I had to do to get good grades in school, but I think that wasn't enough for real life. So.
Interesting.
could have used something like the Global Impact Diploma to help me articulate, how did I learn, metacognition, why was I learning, and why was that important, and how was I going to apply it in new contexts? Yeah.
I think all three of you highlight kind of the essence of this program is you're all coming from different pathways, different experiences, and different perspectives. And I think that's just amazing if that gets replicated amongst 90 schools. We had a guest not too long ago from the Simons Institute. They look at existential threats, and the two biggest existential threats, they're a research institute, they work a lot with the United Nations and governments, is AI and the environment. I'm wondering, do you feel as educators and curators and choreographers of this alternative diploma program, should there be some non-negotiables that every kid is going to have to deal with? Or is it really whatever you want to do, as long as it's rigorous and you have agency and you're reflecting and you're going through the design cycle? Or do you feel that we're at a stage maybe where when young people are curating their own learning paths, there's some non-negotiables? For example, climate change, I'll just pick that, or AI, or it could be anything, peace, etc. I'm wondering, how do you grapple with that in your own design of it? And I'm going to let whoever wants to start and maybe hear from all three of you.
I think I'll jump in. I think from my perspective, I know, as somebody who is at my school, I know that that's in our curriculum at our school. So my first answer is I would rely on my school curriculum to make sure that, students are engaging with those topics. We do a lot of work with the sustainable development goals, so I know that kids are engaging with that. It's a great question, though, as to whether that is something that we should consider across all of our schools. It's a great question that you posed, John. I don't know.
Melanie?
One of the things I was thinking is I just had the fortunate opportunity to be at the AAIE conference in Washington, D.C. this past week. And there was a lot of conversation around AI and thinking about how we teach students to use AI as a thought partner and to be able to look at ways that we are engaging with AI, not to do the work for us, but to help us get better at analyzing and using our own thinking skills to move into higher level thinking going forward. And when you're looking at the World Economic Forum, they talk about the number one fastest growing skill that students are going to need coming up to 2030 is AI and big data. And so I think we across our schools are going to have to do this work, and we need to upskill educators. We need to be doing the research and thinking about it ourselves as leaders. And yes, we're going to have to teach students to use it. I'm not sure that I think it needs to be a particular area of focus and everyone does it in the same way at the same time, because AI is going to continue to evolve faster than we could possibly do that. But really recognizing the power that's there, it's not going away. So how can we use it in a way that helps all of us grow our understanding and get rid of some of the tasks we maybe don't need to do manually, let AI do it for us, and then use that data to move things forward after the information has been gathered.
Thank you. Patricia.
I'll echo what Mel had to say there about AI. The reality, John, is that every student's already using AI everywhere. They were using it before the teachers were. And so what we really need to be doing is helping students, just guiding them to how to use it, as Mel said, as a thought partner, and it's not just something that's going to do their homework for them. And then we also simultaneously have to work with teachers to say, how can we use this as a tool to enhance learning alongside learning? What pedagogical shifts need to happen in a world with AI? You can't assess the same, you can't teach the same in a world of AI. And so a lot of our responsibility, the responsibility of educators all over the world, is going to be to help support teachers through that shift. But in thinking about a common experience for students, I think it's important to note that the Global Impact Diploma is based on a competency model. And we spent a lot of time, analyzing and taking a look at things like the Melbourne metrics to really take a look. And there's a lot of really great research around competency-based learning happening all over the world right now.
Yes.
And that's really where you can provide some of the common experiences for students, is in the way that we hold them accountable to really particular transdisciplinary skills. And so Tami was mentioning earlier a little bit about the process portfolio that the students compile as part of the work, and it's all competency driven. And the courses that students take that are common courses are also competency driven. And so that's where you get that shared experience. It's not topical, it's skill based.
When you talk about that, are there some kids that are better disposed to engage with this global alternative diploma? Do you feel that that conversation is a conversation you have with the family and the child? I'm just imagining a kid's really keen on doing it and their parents like, no, you need to do the full IB. I'm just wondering what is the vetting process that maybe you anticipate? And maybe vetting is the wrong word. How do kids are encouraged to do it, or maybe discouraged to do it because maybe their setup and the way they engage with learning might be better off in a different context and a different approach, which might be more exam driven or a high school credit system. I'm just curious, what is the kind of, how do you get across the start line? What are some of the things that you're looking for? Again, I'm opening it up to the floor.
I'm happy to tell you where we started, John. In the parent presentations that I described earlier, and the questions that were generated both from students and parents who reached out after hearing about the Global Impact Diploma, we have really encouraged every child to talk with their college counselor, with the coordinators of our programs, with their grade level leaders about what they want going forward. What are their goals and ambitions, and what are they interested in? And we're really trying to look at personalizing this based on meeting individual student needs, way more so than a vetting process. Even with our full IB diploma program, any student that would like to step into that program is given an opportunity to do so. But those coaching conversations around what you're trying to do, what you'd like in the future, and the pathway to get there is what I think should really influence who decides to step into this type of diploma. It's meant to be about the individual student and knowing what their interests are. So it feels really important that we're getting to know them and their interests and their passions, and using that information as the basis for whether this is a good fit or not.
I think that's so powerful, is to have the child kind of share their ambitions and their desires and kind of construct your understanding of them that way. I think that's just really rich. I don't know, Patricia and Tami, have you had some conversations with kids that are thinking about it? I know Patricia said you're just doing the one course. I'm just wondering, how are kids picking that one course? Is it just optional, or do you have to talk to somebody, or is it like you pick any other course?
I think it'll be part of the registration process. So we're just about to kick off semester 2 next week. We're still finishing up our summer holidays. And so then the counselors will begin their meetings with students in grades 9, grades 10, grades 11, and they'll be doing all the course counseling that they would normally be doing. And so we've got this as an option, and they'll have a chance to talk to kids about the possibility of joining the full diploma program in another year.
Excellent. Tami.
Yeah, our conversations in Budapest are similar to what Mel's describing in Bucharest. The way that we sort of describe the Global Impact Diploma classes, we've offered some of the classes that we're going to continue to offer. The way that we describe them is that they're more project-based, collaborative, interdisciplinary. And so if that's the kind of learning that you enjoy, then these are great. This is a great fit for you.
Excellent. You all are in 3 different schools, and I imagine you're leaders in schools, so your leadership team has engaged with this and really taken this on board, and you're part of this collaborative. What are some things that you've noticed where schools have been hesitant or maybe don't have as much of consensus around that? What are some of the things that you have noticed as kind of, schools, a common maybe blockage that then you have to sit down with the school and kind of unpack it and make them, kind of bring them around in the sense them really understand the depth and the rigor of the program. I'm just curious, what is one of the things that schools often put up as a blockage?
I think some schools, if you're a small school, some schools might think about resources, human resources, class sizes. Can we offer a class that only maybe 3 students want to take? We can't, dedicate FTEs to that. And one of the ways that we think that we can address that in the future, probably not right now in August, but one of the ways we can address that in the future is by collaborating on courses and connecting our students across schools online with shared experiences. So if you've got 3 students and I've got 2 students and Mel has 10 students, we can get them all together into a shared class, similar to a GOA model, or even the Imperfect Art of Living through the Innovation Academy online brings students together from different schools. So that might be a solution for some schools who don't have enough faculty and enough students to make another program, if you like.
I love that, because so many of our schools are of different sizes, but some of the bigger schools have a lot of resources, and it's it feels like a bit like your philosophy. You've come together as many different schools, you're engaging and you're sharing, and why wouldn't we leverage the resources for those smaller schools? Is there like a goal to make this now like a piece of paper that gets generated, or a blockchain, or is there the hope that actually there is an official document that says you have done this, like the IB? I'm just curious, what is your thinking for kind of the final, not a medal, but final acknowledgement that this person has gone through this? You're all smiling, which is good.
I think a medal would be great. I think they should design some medals.
I think our design team needs a medal, Tami. We've been working weekends and weekends since June.
Absolutely.
And that's, I think we should highlight that, Patricia, because you're bringing that up. This is something all 3 of you are doing on top of your super busy jobs. You're in leadership positions, you're doing professional development, you're a secondary principal. There are just so many things happening in the day, and finding the time and balancing that is really so important and also challenging. You seem all 3 very passionate about that. And would you say that is the driver of the group, is a collective passion to really make this happen?
Absolutely. You go ahead, Patricia, sorry.
Yeah, 100%. It absolutely is. It's been so inspiring to work with these colleagues from around the world. So after we met, all were together. And when we got together in May in Budapest, there were about more than 100 people fully present. And then there were also another 40 or 50 colleagues online. And we did like this design relay that was so much fun. And then afterwards, a number of people agreed to be part of the core design team. And that was about 30 of us, guys. I think that was about right, 30 of us. And we met all through summer vacation in June and July and into August, and we met beyond that. But all of that has to be coordinated in some way. And I think we'd be remiss in this conversation if we didn't acknowledge that we have a coordinating team, 3 people in particular, who have really helped us stay organized and have really helped us. They've kind of had the bigger vision of like, okay, we need some people to work on this piece of it, and we need some other people who are going to work on this, and somebody to call the meetings, send the Zoom links, document and capture the notes, and make sure that meetings get recorded for people who can't be there. And so I think it's really important that we give a shout out to Corey, Joe, and Austin, who have really helped coordinate all the efforts. So we've got all this passion, but it still takes organization, and it never would have happened without those 3.
And there are always
Absolutely
those
true.
silent heroes in the background that are making sure people show up at the Zoom, that the link is correct. No, it's not at 4:30, it's at 4:00. Those things. And yeah, well, let's hats off to Corey, Joe, and the third person, sorry? Austin. And just hats off to you. And we're definitely celebrating the work that you're doing in the background. We're coming to the end of this wonderful conversation, and I would just like each one of you, as we don't do the Ezra Klein, what 3 books you read, but we do ask you each to share either to a school leader. Ideally, we'd like one for a school leader and one for an educator. Just a parting thought, something for people to go away and think about. And before we do that, I want to make sure our audience knows we have show notes. Patricia, Melanie, and Tami have done a wonderful job of sharing a lot of resources. So go in there. And of course, if you want to connect with them, if you're a school and you're thinking, wow, this is really interesting, I should be talking to them, they've put their LinkedIn, they're all on LinkedIn, and that seems now the good way to connect with people. So do dive into the show notes. They have their bios, some links, and some other things. So definitely, and if you feel like you want to connect, I'm sure they won't mind if you drop them a LinkedIn message and say, hey, what can we do, etc. So on that note, I'm going to start with Tami. Two kind of parting thoughts, if you're okay with that. Patricia defaulted to you guys, so I'm starting.
Sure. I think that I would put out there to educators that there are so many fantastic connections in all the work that educators do every day. We became educators because we're passionate about, what we do. We have hope for the world. We see that and we want to share that with our kids. So I would just kind of put out there that if you could continue to hype yourself up and do the good work and really in whatever way that is natural for you to share your joy and your passion and love for learning and the application of that learning with the students around you, and help them find their purpose and help them understand and discover rather how they want to contribute and give back. That in the end, that's kind of what it's all about. Not necessarily, we need to know the dates and the revolutions and those kinds of things. Sure we do. But more importantly, we need to help each other thrive in this world, right?
Absolutely.
So keep doing what you're doing and inspiring those students.
And it's amazing how some educators are inspirational. You hear so many kids. Later years, I've had some kids that were in third grade in the 90s that have connected with me on LinkedIn, and it's amazing.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Melanie.
Yeah, when I think about a message for fellow educators, it would really be just to thank them for the impact that we know they have in their students' lives each and every day. So the Global Impact Diploma has been centered around the idea of how students can have impact in the world. And we recognize that without teachers, it would be much harder for students to have impact as well. So I think the relationships that teachers develop with students are a huge piece of what helps students be successful in the future. So I would encourage teachers to continue to get to know each and every student in their class and to really learn about what drives the student and connect with them through shared experience. And when I think about leaders, my takeaway from being involved in the Global Impact Diploma is just how powerful it is to work in a collaborative process with other leaders. So my tip to all leaders out there would be to remember that we're not alone. Sometimes it feels a little bit like it within a school, but there is this beautiful network of humans available to us as leaders, and we should really learn to tap into that and utilize one another to collectively grow the work that we do on a more regular basis. So I wish much joy and collaboration for all of my fellow leaders out there going forward.
Thank you,
beautiful, Melanie.
Thank you very much. Patricia.
I'm going to totally jump in on what Mel's train on that one, because that was my number one. Like, let's keep working together. It's, we don't have to work in isolation as international schools. We know we have community. We've talked about, the connections we have across our schools for years. Let's keep working together. Let's keep breaking down the silos of the work we're all trying to do individually and lean on one another more. So I totally echo Mel's on that. And the last thing I would just say is to all educators around the world, have courage, be brave. The world needs different schools. Our students deserve better schools. And it can feel overwhelming. Change can feel overwhelming. It feels like we're fighting opposition forces all over the place. And to be brave and to keep fighting the good fight. The students need us. Our schools need us.
Thank you, Tami, Melanie, and Patricia. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. And they're the alternative what's the new title? Alternative collaborative or collaborative alternative?
Pathways Collaborative.
The Pathways Collaborative, and I apologize. Pathways Collaborative, write it down, record it. These are the people that you want to definitely reach out to. And they are, of course, doing this global impact diploma. And that's something definitely look out there. And these are 90 different schools. So chances are you might be in one of the schools and don't even realize it's going on. But so dig around, find out what's going on. And I want to thank our guests. Again, to our audience, thank you. More and more people are subscribing to our LinkedIn. We so appreciate the feedback, positive and negative comments. Those are always helpful. And we really appreciate you showing up on a regular basis. And we look forward to more conversations. Again, Tami, Melanie, and Patricia, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a real privilege to learn about the work you're doing. And really, hats off to everybody in your organization, because you're doing this on your own time. And it just really is so impressive how dedicated and passionate you're about this. So our kids are very fortunate to have educators like you out there making sure that the IB might be a little different than it was. So thank you so much.